Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Spring AEVC lecture, and thank you so much for coming on this beautiful day. I'm Rachel Kitzinger, and I've taken over the leadership of the AEVC with the untiring and essential support of the AEVC Steering Committee. As you all know, Michael McCarthy has led the AEVC since its inception with absolutely untiring dedication and amazing thoughtfulness to how the college and retired faculty and the community can stay in touch. So I'm sure you will all want to join me in thanking Michael for it. I also want to thank Richard Lowry, who behind the scenes has kept the AEVC website going for years and years and years. It will be transferred to a Vassar page, so I will be letting everybody know how to get the website when it's active. And also one last announcement, the fall talk probably in October will be Richard Wilson. And thank you also to Martha Barry and the Alumni House crew, and Pete, and the Dean of the Faculty for supporting this event. I know we're all very excited to hear about Harry's photography, but Mary Kay Lombino has kindly agreed to introduce him. She's the Deputy Director and Emily Hargroves Fisher and Richard B. Fisher Curator at the Francis Lehman Loeb Art Center. Mary Kay has had over many years a significant impact on the Loeb collection by expanding it to include the work of contemporary artists who work in many, many media. She's used her extensive knowledge of artists' work, and in some cases her contacts with the artists themselves, to bring the Loeb collection into the 21st century. I'll use this opportunity to alert you to a book that will be available in June, to which Mary Kay contributed, called Making and Meaning, the Francis Lehman Loeb Art Center, Vassar College. Mary Kay's contributions include a chapter on building Vassar's modern art collection and a chapter on works by self-taught artists. Besides building the collection, Mary Kay has done a great deal to make the Loeb a lively, active, and inviting place, both for the Vassar community and for visitors from Poughkeepsie and beyond. So please join me in welcoming Mary Kay, who will introduce Harry.
That was not a picture of my family. So thank you, Harry. Thank you, Rachel, for that lovely introduction. I didn't know I was getting introduced so that I could introduce. So I just am so excited to be in this room full of fans of Harry. And if you're not a fan of Harry yet, no, you will be in about an hour, I'm convinced. You're in for a treat. So I get the pleasure of introducing Harry, and I am wanting to first say what a multimedia artist Harry truly is. I can think of artworks that he's made in sculpture, painting, drawing, site-specific installation, photography, of course, which we're going to hear a whole bunch about in a little while. I even learned recently that he took part in some performance art and dance back in the 60s. So I tried to get a picture of it, but I couldn't, so we'll have to just imagine what that looked like. Harry served as professor of art for 40 years, and he and Peter Charlap initiated and developed what is now the studio program from the beginning, back in the 1980s. And it's very hard to imagine what Vassar would be like if it didn't have a studio program. I see lots of people from that area here, including former student, at least one here. There's so many artists walking around this campus and out in the world that are graduates of that program. And that's one important feature, I think, of Harry's legacy here at Vassar and beyond. It's been over 16 years or so since I've known Harry, and I've had the pleasure of working with him on various projects, seeing him in action with the students, pushing them to make their best work, really embodying their role as artists themselves, sometimes in the famous crits, which of course are the basis of any really good studio art program, grueling as they may be. They're supposed to be. Then I had the pleasure in 2010 of working with Harry on a project in the atrium at the Loeb, in which he completely transformed that space for an installation called Hole in the Wall. And it is a soaring tall space, and it just became sort of a swirl of color and line and form and pattern. And to this day, I have the poster for that exhibition outside my office. It's a proud moment for the Loeb and a fantastic work. The Loeb also organized this exhibition, Tilled Fields, drawings by Harry Roseman, and I brought a bunch of books. This was a little publication that we did, and there's a big pile of them up by the front door, so if you want to grab one on the way out, please do, and if we run out, we've got more of those at the Loeb. Another plug to come over to the Loeb. So beyond that, there's being photographed by Harry. So probably everyone in this room has been photographed. I have had the pleasure numerous times at pretty much every gathering of the art department where Harry and I were both present, and then also at the Rhinebeck Farmers Market, any time in the summer months when I was lucky enough to run into Harry along with his wife, also an amazingly talented artist, Kathy Murphy, who's here, or in the art store or at the Whitney, just by chance. And all of these pictures, of course, are out on the World Wide Web. We'll hear some more about that too. So now some of the impressive facts from Harry's very long CV. I won't name them all because we'd be here forever. Harry, born in 1945, earned a BFA at Pratt Institute in 1968. Immediately thereafter, from 69 to 72, he worked as a studio assistant for the surrealist-inspired American artist, Joseph Cornell. And in 73, after Cornell's death, he assisted Tony Smith in New Jersey. Also, at that point, began a few of his teaching stints at Queens College, Brooklyn College, Philadelphia College, Jersey City State College, and finally at Vassar, which began in 1981. He retired from teaching here in 2020 and is currently the Isabel Hyman Emeritus Professor of Art. His notable exhibitions include Harry Roseman Contemporary Bronzes at the University Museum at University of California at Santa Barbara in 1983, 5 drawings shown also there was a lecture that was presented at the Delarnus Museum in 2019. These are just to name a few. That's over a very long period from 83 to 2019. He's also been included in numerous group exhibitions and frequent exhibits at Davis and Langdale in New York City. Many people know his work from his public commissions, including the 40-foot bronze relief at J.P. Morgan in New York, the Wall Street subway station, which was completed in 1990, an outdoor freestanding sculpture comprised of 4 dispersed elements called 4 Houses in Rockland Community College. That's from 1996. And of course, the 600-foot relief sculpture located at the arrivals corridor of the JFK International Air Terminal, which was completed in 2001. Anyone's flown internationally, you've been welcomed by that piece. And the 360-degree wall drawing and architectural steel sculptural element for the Vassar College Thompson Memorial Library, which was completed in 2012. Collections that Harry's included in are many. I'll name a few. The Achenbach Foundation of Graphic Arts, the Addison Gallery of American Art, Birmingham Museum of Art, Museum of Fine Arts, Brooklyn Museum, Cincinnati, Heckscher Museum, Museum of Contemporary Art, San Diego, Menil Collection, Philadelphia Museum, RISD Museum, MFA, Virginia Museum of Arts, and of course, the Francis Lehman Loeb Art Center. Today we'll hear about his photography, which is one of the many forms that his work takes, which, as this wonderful title alludes to, and the tagline, began in the 1950s when Harry was in 5th grade. And to start us off, I'm just going to read an excerpt from Harry's artist statement from his website, Harry Roseman, A Chronicle. It was at the beginning an impulse akin to that of anyone who takes photographs of groups of people to record an event, to have a memento, a souvenir of a group of friends or relatives, to have something to look at and stop time. Over the next 2 or 3 decades, this essential impulse evolved into a project or projects, an idea, a concept. One that not only deals with time's passage, but also with the tradition of commemoration itself, social and cultural history, as well as the swirling, changing social interactions of a circle of friends and acquaintances living in a specific time and place, social and cultural history, a group biography. That is getting me even more excited about your talk. So please help me give Harry a warm welcome.
Hi. Oh, not too bad. I'm having kind of a voice issue, but it's not so terrible. I'm going to start. What's the newscaster from Mary Tyler Moore show who always started when No, maybe the weather guy, about starting to talk about where he was born and how he grew up, and I'm afraid that seems a little like this. Anyway, so I'm going to show you a couple of very early photographs, but not too many, and then we'll move along and I'll say various things. So the first photograph is, the first two I think are around 55, 56, and I had a penchant for taking photographs of groups of people, and, oh, I forgot something, wait a minute. I don't need it yet, but I might. I have a laser pointer in case I need it faster. So, actually not that it's that important for you guys, but the bottom right person's my brother, and the girl on the top right is probably the first girl I had a crush on. Okay. So this is my 5th grade class, which I set up on the staircase and took a group picture of them. And it made me realize, in some ways, I was always who I am. And this is a picture I took in 2019, which is almost the same picture, like 60 years later. And a few things occurred to me, actually, in talking with Elizabeth Arlick and my wife, Catherine, about how to think about this process. And one thing that came out of those conversations are the questions, when does instinct, I couldn't have been that thoughtful when I was 10 years old, when does instinct turn into idea? When does idea turn into art? And what do we know and when do we know it? I don't have answers for those questions, but one of the reasons I actually wanted to give this talk is you do your work. This is maybe not true of a lot of people, but it's certainly true of me. And you're this close to it, and you're working and working, and you don't back up enough. And I knew this would give me a chance to back way up and see what this work in photography might mean and what it meant to me. And this is really the first public talk I've given on this work. And there was a period, also when I was quite young, when I was taking 35 millimeter color slide. And I have about, out of hundreds of photos, I must have about 6 left, because the room and studio I had when my parents moved from one place to the other, tended to flood. So in the morning, I might put my feet down on the floor into 4 inches of water. But what happened was, not that I minded that much, but a lot of my pictures, the emulsion disappeared. So I kind of think of that as my lost Latique period. And this is one of the few left, and it's autobiographical in the sense that to the right is my mother, in the middle is my aunt, and behind her are my mother and aunt's mother, and that's my cousin. And you see there's little worn away marks. So I'm very pleased I have a few of them, but I'm kind of pissed that most of them got destroyed. And I can tell you a little bit of a history of a working class group of Jews who lived in Brooklyn in this time and what they did during the summer, but I don't have enough time. So, and that was taken, I will say, that was taken at Lipkin's Bungalow Colony in New Jersey. And so I continued to photograph events in my family and groups of people. This is my sister's wedding, which I could tell you stories about too, but I am not going to. And clearly, the person in the wedding dress is my sister. And I started self-portraits around the same time, maybe 55, I guess. I would go into those photo booths, and I consider them self-portraits even though they were taken by a machine, which maybe is sort of like the AI work being done now. I don't know. Anyway, and one thing that happens, or happened over time, is some of the work I did when I was young became lifelong projects, photographic projects, and they evolved, and some were ideas in the moment. Oh, that's something I want to do. So the self-portraits initially evolved rather slowly. And this was outside my basement room that flooded in Sheepshead Bay. And I set a timer on the camera. And this is me and Catherine in the 60s, a photo booth picture. And around 68, I got very serious about the self-portraits. And for a while, I took one every day. And I guess I got bored with that, and they all looked pretty much identical. And so I kept making self-portraits, but they took various turns, like this one. And this was when Catherine and I were at Pratt, and art students like to play act and play around, so I painted my face with acrylic paint, which probably wasn't a good idea. But anyway, that's one of the self-portraits from that group. This I think of as a Sherry Levine kind of picture, because it's a picture of me that someone else took from the Vassar homepage. But since I took it, I consider it a self-portrait. So I had these various projects, and I didn't quite know what to do with them. So they started as contact sheets in notebooks. So this was from February 7th, 71, when I started this project, which was called Visitors. And the person on top is a friend named Jonathan Santlofer, and he came over to visit Catherine and I in Jersey City, and I took his photograph. And this is one of the projects that happened as an instantaneous idea. And so once I took his photograph, I said, I need to take everybody's picture who comes to where we live. So that started one of these, the second of these ongoing projects after the self-portraits. Then I graduated to press type, which I thought was pretty fancy. And this is 4 years later, and still Visitors. And this is a party we had and a group of friends, actually one of which is here. That guy is Daniel Wolf. And so we hold on to friends for a while. And so what happened with these projects was, and they they were endless books, and I had many of these projects, and it was clear to me at a certain point that you can't live a life and document it that much. So I did away with about half the projects. I mean, from visitors, I went to visiting. So I took pictures of when I was at other people's places. Then I decided to document the journey to their houses. So finally, I ditched a bunch of stuff. But what became the permanent projects were groups, visitors, and self-portraits, at least as far as these kinds of projects. So in the visitors, and some of my undertakings have rules. A lot of them do. Of course, I get to make these rules. So for visitors, that is every single person who comes up the driveway. We didn't used to have a driveway, but who came to where we lived. And even if your car broke down and you showed up at my door, I would take your photograph. And sometimes people would come more than once. So this FedEx guy came a number of times. And one of the rules is each time a person comes within a day, a new photograph, an entry. If someone stays over for 3 days, stays overnight, still one entry. If someone leaves and comes back in the same day, one entry. So that was I figured I had to have some parameters. And actually, I think I have this under visitors, but I probably should move it to self-portraits because visitors trumps groups, and self-portraits trumps groups and sometimes visitors. But sometimes that gets a little vague. I guess I could use the same photograph in 2 projects, but I haven't done that. And this I just put in this morning as an indication of how this can also sometimes be a portrait of a moment, because this was clearly 220 at the early part of the pandemic. And this is what people looked like for a while on my visitors and group projects. And some people were very willing and cooperative, but every once in a while, someone said, no, I don't take my picture, I don't like it. So I got the idea of saying, how about I photograph your back? And almost everyone was fine with that. I mean, I have a picture of this guy from the front from a previous visit, but he decided that was enough presence for him on the internet. So then he did this. So some of the projects begat subcategories. So and when the internet came along, it solved my notebook issue. So all these projects that I just mentioned are on the website called A Chronicle, which Mary Kay mentioned. And then the Chronicle kind of begot subcategories. But even having less projects, it became clear that I couldn't keep up with what I was doing. So I'm always playing catch up or triage. There's always things missing. But so some aspects of the projects I think of as placeholders for an idea that will probably never get totally realized. So within where it used to be just connected to the visitors, but now it's part of all of them. My idea was to have an individual page for every person on my site, which would be hundreds and hundreds. And I have a questionnaire I send out. People send me things, but I'm way, way, way behind on that. But I do have enough of them, so the idea is there. And the idea partly is to make the portrait of the people who show up, which is usually a photograph, sometimes many, into a bigger biography. So they're almost like miniature websites about these people. So this one is Ralph Arlick's, and if you make images, I ask people to send images. If you do writing, I ask for writing samples. I have to get back on sending those out. And then once I send one to you, I nudge you until you get the stuff back to me. And if you're a writer, you put samples of your writing. If you're not a writer or a visual artist, you can put your dog on. You know, I'm open, but I need some visual thing. And this is Ralph's rather long answers to my questions. Sometimes people give me a one-sentence answer, which is fine. And this is all part of that same website. Then I decided I needed a memorial page, in memoriam, for the website. So this was a friend of ours, Scott Burton. So there's a number of people on that. And as I get older, more people seem to be dying. So I get more behind on that even. And the thing that strikes me is, I don't know what the word is. It's not ironic exactly, is to have a memorial page on a project where everyone will eventually be dead. Seems kind of odd, but nonetheless, I've done that. And the self-portraits sometimes were with other people, like the one with Catherine that you saw. And this is with a doctor. This is the first medical person I took with me who saved my life quite a while before this. This was taken in 2005. In 1990, I was rushed to the hospital, and I had like 30 seconds to a minute not to die, and this guy saved my life. And then the sad part is, a few years after this, he died of a tumor, like a brain tumor. Anyway, but this much later evolved into another subcategory, which when I get to it, I'll mention it. And this is my dentist, and me, and this is my dermatologist, who seemed very vain to me. And when he saw it, he said to me, "You're a pretty good-looking guy, but not as good-looking as me." He's like a, what kind of doctor is Dr. Carden? He's not a surgeon, orthopedic doctor. I was having trouble with my knee or something. And as part of this, the self-portraits, I also took pictures of myself getting my hair cut. And that led to an exhibition, which I'll talk about later. And this is me and Olivier in his apartment. And this is way, way, way later, me and Olivier in the salon where he eventually opened the salon. This is 2014, I think it says. And the other was whatever it was. And then in 2014, it was a strange year. I had an exhibition in an art gallery. I had an exhibition in the hair salon, which was all self-portraits, mostly in this place, and mostly with Olivier. And then I did something called local business installations, which I'll get to in a little bit. So Amitava Kumar wrote a lovely essay about the local business. I got a very nice review for the show in the hair salon, nothing for the show in the art gallery. Totally the opposite of what I would have expected. I figured these other two projects were under the radar projects. And this is some more, that's me in the mirror. And this is more of that project. And you might be able to tell, maybe I can use my laser pointer. Which is not, oh, there it is. That not only did I have bigger pictures and smaller pictures, but I put a whole bunch of little pictures stuck in the mirror, like you see sometimes at hair salons in various places. So this was a contextual show. And this is in 22, Olivier. Now, I don't need my haircut by Olivier anymore. So Kathy kind of shaves it off. But when Catherine gets a haircut, I do an update self-portrait with Olivier. These are the three websites I have that are photography-based or have photography in them. The Chronicle, the China, which I'll get to afterwards. I'm going to show you a little excerpt. And my portfolio website has photographs as well as other things. And sometimes I do very short-lived series of photographs. And there's a lot of them, but I'm only going to show you a few of one. So this project was called Free. And I'll show you a couple of others. And they play out, finally they feel repetitive, so I stopped doing them. And I have probably 3 or 4 or 5 of them. And then every once in a while, I do individual photographs. And one of the things, yeah, it's a great sign. One of the things about that is to always have your camera ready. And if I go to like a party or a dinner somewhere, and I take a few photographs, no matter what, I've had a great time. And this is probably not a very Zen thing, but I love that every minute I can be working in some way. So this started a series of installations. I went into Gladmore Cleaners, which is on Raymond, and there was this shadow from the window on the wall. And I went outside to see where it came from. It turned out the sun hit a car mirror, which bounced off that wall, and I figured that may never happen again. So I photographed it and then hung it in that, asked them if they minded if I installed it in that spot. And that started this idea of doing installations where I do my errands called local business. So the first one, I did about 7. The only one still totally existing is the one in Gladmore. So that's through the window, one of my photographs. That's 2 of them. And the other thing about this project, I don't put my name on the work. These are framed. Often they're just mounted and hung on the wall. And the idea is to, in a sense, honor and take note of, I do a lot of errands, and it's a big part of my life. And I have this interaction, sometimes over years and years, with people I do errands with. So I thought it might be nice to do these contextual photographs without it saying this is art. So when people come in, they'll look around and see pictures, photographs of the places they're in, and maybe think somewhat differently or look a little harder about something as mundane as going to the cleaners. And this was one of the pictures in the cleaners, and this is what this looks like. Well, this is my photo, but so sometimes you don't see the photo when it's full of clothes, and sometimes you do. So I'm going to show you a couple of pictures from some of the other installations. Oh, not yet. So I put In Sung and John Wang's portrait up there, and then I took a picture of them down here. And then I took the picture that I took of them with that picture and put that down there. And recently I did this picture with them 3 times. And In Sung said something so swell. She said, "It's kind of like the past, the present, and the future." I loved it. I thought that was such a great response. So this is a doctor's office. So this is my photograph of this situation. And I'm only going to show you a few from each one. One of the things you can't understand from the photo is, so there's this woodwork, and this is a photograph of that woodwork, photographically put together with the photograph of that place, and then I cut the shape so it would look like an object, like the same shape as that. And that led me to doing a lot of things with frames that were photographic, that I'll show you afterwards. And this is the same doctor's office. Oh, sorry. So when you look through this door, you see this chair, that chair, this is what you see. So some of them also wound up being a little hallucinatory insofar as figuring out where you were. This is in On Location when it was not far from Adams. And so I did a whole bunch of photos. I'm only going to show you one of these. But one thing that pleased me, so this is my photo, and it's up on an easel. This is their dog, Stryker, who always seemed to be there. And so there he is, just like in the photo. And this is in the bathroom of a restaurant called, what was that restaurant? Oh, Another Fork in the Road. Yeah, thanks. It's good to have someone who knows your life with you. And so this frame is a photograph of this frame whereas the picture inside is all of this, and then this echoes this frame. But what happens is I would always think of it as a gift to whoever establishment it was. And so I would pay for the mounting, I would pay for the printing, and I would tell them, well, you can keep it. But for instance, they closed at a certain point, and that was that. So between closing and a couple of people taking these things down for strange reasons, like one, in the physical therapist, one partner was happy to have it. I don't think I show anything from that. The other partner took them all down, and when I was going around with Ami to show him the different installations, we got there and it wasn't there. And the partner who hadn't agreed in the first place thought somehow I was making fun of them, which I was so far from doing. This was in the Arts Mid-Hudson bathroom. I did a lot of things in that office, and they took that down. So this is, with a fake frame, is the photograph. This is the actual frame that's hung on the wall with me in there. So if I wasn't in there, then you get me watching you while you're in the bathroom. Okay, so when I decided I would do more sub-projects of the self-portraits, and I decided local business was a nice kind of arena to work in. And since I do all these errands, and I know some of these people for years and years, it seemed to me a terrific thing to do self-portraits with them. So you'll see, they're not all up here, but you'll see a lot of people from Adams, where I am. So this is Keith. He retired a couple of years ago. And this is Brad, who runs the fish department. He was just behind the counter, but now he's the manager of the fish department. And this is Margaret, who years before I took her picture when she was working at ARAX. And then years later she wound up working at Adams. And then now she's also married to Al Nowak from On Location. So it's like sort of like a community. Well, a lot like a community. And this is a whole bunch of people from Adams. And I have some more, and I have some more I have to do. It's funny, the other day I was in Adams at night, which is very rare for me, and I looked across the registers in the front, and I didn't know one person there. It kind of made me sad, or maybe it felt like death a little bit. And certainly this idea of time going by and memory and mortality is embedded in a lot of these projects. And I think maybe it helps me deal with those issues a bit. It's not going to make them go away, unfortunately, but this is a recent self-portrait I took with John Wong and Insoon. So this is a self-portrait. Oh, good, we're getting near the end where I can show you a little video. So the self-portraits have taken on all kinds of ways of being photographs. So this is me, my profile, and so it's called Self-Portrait with a Stranger. And it was like February of this year when we were going to London. And this is one I took in April at Walgreens. So I've been having a pretty interesting time with them because I allow all kinds of stuff to happen with them. This is not really my desktop, but it is how my desktop looks today. It's a photograph. Every once in a while I document my desktop. So it's a photograph of the desktop this morning because I thought since it said 55 and today, you needed to have a photo from today. So in 1987, we went to China. And I took around 3,500 photos there and recorded, 30-something hours of sound. And I thought maybe someday I'd do something with it. So 35 years later, I figured out what it was I was going to do with it. And I started this project, which I didn't even know what it was. It used to be called China 1987, not a film, but it became clear it was a film. So the way I handle it is I do it in installments. So I'm up to 11 installments, but we're still in the first city, so I don't know how many there are going to be. And it is a film, but it lives on the internet, and it'll probably be hours long, and maybe I sent 2 of them away, which were shown at an animation film festival, but I'll see what happens to them as I go on. So I just threw a few stills in that I took in China that I like. These are all from Suzhou, though. Okay, China, 1987. So now I'm going to show you a short, I forget if it's 9 or 10. It'll say at the end, one of the installments or chapters or whatever we want to call it from this project. Okay, let me see if I could get this going. Oh, good. All right, so now you're at the movies.
Do you want us to wait for you, or? No, I'll be down there in a second.
Can I call them?
No. Nice to meet you. Call them now.
Richard! Richard!
Oh, that was perfect.
Oh, I'll leave that there. All right, that's it. Any questions? That's it.
Sir,
Yes.
could you please tell the people how the rules of the China?
Oh, yeah. So, rules. So the China project has a few rules. I already said I took about 3,500 stills and 30-something hours of, for the most part, very poor sound. And the main rule is I'm not allowed to use any images or any sound that I didn't produce while on that trip in 1987. And so I have this bracketed bunch of stuff to work with, and that's it. But then I'm allowed to do whatever I want to the stuff. And it's as much about memory and dream as it is about going to a place. And for instance, I wasn't in those places daytime and nighttime. So we took the daytime pictures, made them into nighttime pictures, and then back into daytime pictures. And then all the movement was from cutting the photos apart and videoing them and animating them. And then each one, I'm trying to have each one have an ending so they can, in some way, stand up for by themselves, even though in the end there'll be a totality. And this was Guangzhou, which it may have said on there, which used to be called Canton. And we went from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, which we're still there. And then we have many cities and many weeks. Not that every city will have to be in it. It's really going to partly depend on what I have to work with and what kind of ideas I get. So that's that for that. Yes,
Honey, can you just say
Rachel.
a little bit more about, you introduced this notion of progression from instinct to idea to art.
Right.
And I'm very curious how that played in the creation of this.
Well, by the time this happened, it was too late. Meaning, I was already a grown-up and I had ideas about everything. And I had ideas about making art and concepts. So that phrase was more about so many of these threads that started very young. I don't know how many of the ideas were there, but I wasn't articulating them. And so it was just, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. And then eventually they became ideas and projects and became part of my art enterprise. And this was really trying to solve this body of work I had taken in China. And over that 35 years since the trip, when I started doing these, I would open up the photos and just stop at one that interested me and take it apart and move it around. And I did that for a couple of years, amongst doing other things, until I realized that if I dealt with it somewhat chronologically and in installments, I could get a handle on it. So then, and the first installments are much shorter and simpler. And each installment, I learn more stuff, and I work with various people. I have a new person I'm working with who's here, actually, who's terrific. And that'll open up things. But, for instance, I don't know if this is pertinent, but episode or installment 12 I've been working on for a year and a half. And I must say, since I've been working with Sylvia, I think the first month we got as much done as I got done in the whole year. So it's moving along. I'm much more optimistic about seeing the end of this. But a lot of the projects don't have ends in the sense. The visitors, first of all, there's missing. And the groups and the self-portrait will just end when I end. And my hope is to have the Chronicle website be usable when I'm no longer here. And that's sort of what I meant. And then everyone in them will be dead eventually. But I do want to catch up more. I'm so far behind on everything. And then I'm drawing and stuff. Gordon, did you have a question? Yeah. Oh, Ralph?
No, Michael.
Oh, Michael. Yes, sorry.
How do you see the connection or lack of connection among the very different forms of art that you create?
I hate that question. Every once in a while, So I'm working on something, and then I get an idea. And then I'm working on that. But I haven't sort of left that behind, even if I stop working on it. And every once in a while, the projects or what I'm working on cross. And then I see that I have a big relationship. And boy, does that thrill me, because sometimes I don't know what the relationship is. So for instance, I did a lot of sculptures in the 70s and 80s, and then related work, which had to do with reliefs, in the 2015s. And then when I started working more on the computer, it felt just like when I was making the reliefs, because I'm going into something that's flat and making it spatial. And some of them really are, some of the, in some of the installments especially, they're left to be seen as reliefs. So when I'm in Photoshop and cutting things out and moving them around, it's the same thing. And I did collages at one point, and this felt like that. So the answer is, sometimes I find my way back through something that seems very different, and then other times it's hard, and I don't. But like I look sometimes at some of my earlier sculptures, even from the 70s, and realize, and I look at something and I say, that could have been my path for the next 50 years. And there would have been nothing wrong with that. And I would have probably been happy doing that. But I couldn't, so I didn't. So I get pulled.
Does the work in later forms ever lead you to go back and alter or change the work you did previously, or do you let it stand?
Well, no. In this, when I get to the end of this, I might back up and make some changes in some of the installments. But it's still the same work. But no, I don't go back in that way. And sometimes I'll, again, go on a path that's related to something I did earlier, but that's history, and I don't need to muck with it. Yes, Laura.
So I was thinking about how you deal with categories, and I remember when, I think it was shortly after I met you, but you had a show at St. John's that was, you were cataloging like cars and other things that were covered with like concealed.
One of my series.
Yeah, it was a series of photographs
Of
of
stuff on
objects
cars.
that were covered with like tarps and things.
Oh, that was the Drake Wrap
Yeah,
and
Drake
Covered
things.
series.
And I was thinking, like, this talk is all about photography, but that was like clearly a body of photographs. But you didn't include that in this talk.
Well, one thing I'm amazed I got done at such a reasonable time, because my biggest fear was I was going to be pulled off here with around the neck. So I just made choices of what I could leave out and cover enough stuff. And the Drake Wrapped and Covered series, there's a lot of them, and they took a number of years to play themselves out. But I must say, because they're about drapery, drape things, and wrap things, they're totally connected to my work with cloth, like in the airport sculpture. So there's ways that they can pull together that you can see it's the same mind. For instance, I have a whole body of work about Dress Cornell I can include. It's too big unto itself, and would take me off on. I was trying to be somewhat linear, not crazily linear, but a little bit linear, and not go off on these stories I might go off on, or bodies of work that would bring us in there, and then it might be hard to get out. Yeah. So that's a good question. Yes.
One of the things that you're good at is art, and another thing is eccentricity. And I'm wondering if you see that, how they might connect with each other.
Well, the art part, I would say the eccentricity part, it's just who I am, you know, and I'm not out to be eccentric, you know, and sometimes I think I'm being very straightforward, and other people don't seem to think so. And Catherine reminded me the other day of when we were in art school together, and I get these assignments, and I'd be very earnest and try to solve the assignments, and once in a while I'd bring them in, and the teacher would say, "You're just making fun of the whole assignment and the whole class." I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, because I wasn't. So I guess it's a take on things that seems sideways, but for me it seems very natural and straightforward. And so, but art is the thing I make, and I'm the maker, so it's, I can't separate the way I see things from the way I do things. Anything else? Let me take a picture of you guys. Let me get the curtains. Could someone pull those so it's not so dark?
Is this a group picture, Henry?
Yes, this is a big group picture.
Unless you stand in front and make it a self-portrait.
Okay.
While you're doing it, Harry, what camera did you take to China?
What camera did I?
To
Oh,
China. Was
a
it-
Nikon SLR camera.
It's not a cell phone.
No,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't digital. Everything had to be scanned. All the photos, and then all the sound had to be digitized as well. For some reason, I'm missing a few hundred photos, but I'll find them here somewhere in my studio. The desktop is a little. The photo of my desktop is a little bit of an indication of my sense of order. So I tend to misplace things. So yeah, so I went through a number of different cameras over the years. You know, and then when this came along, and the pictures got so good, for a while I wouldn't give up, and I was carrying this, and the Nikons just weighed so much, I would be standing like this. And so I'm, you know, I guess I'm not a purist in the sense that certainly the older analog photographs have a very different feel. One thing, they're not always in focus, but they have a very different feel than these do. But that's fine with me. You know, I'm moving along. I have a different feel now that I'm not 20 years old. So I'm fine with it. And it's so nice not to have this shoulder thing being pulled down. Though I must say that, especially when I had this top-mounted flash, people, when I would be in an event, people would go, think I was a professional, would be very nice to be this time, and, you know. And like, for instance, with the groups, one of the rules I have, so sometimes I'm at events, like dinner events, and there's like 5 tables or 10 tables, and my I don't know if it's a rule, but I decided I would only do my table and not become like a wedding photographer. And mostly that's what I do. So I have parameters, and then sometimes, and the groups have to be 3 people, because 2 people are a couple. So luckily I have a sidekick who, when I bump into 2 people, I can pull Catherine in and make it a group. She's not happy about it. But as I tell her, I posed for a number of paintings. One painting alone is worth 1 billion photographs, because it took so long, and she's actually pretty good about it. So you'll see a number of groups on the site that seem to be 2 people and Catherine.
Thank you, Harry.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Please help yourself to wine and food back there. And enjoy.
Not only for her kind words at the beginning, but also her readiness to take over the directorship of the AEVC when Barbara and I were incapacitated. It was idea for the American Association came to us all at a farewell party for the Griffins back in 2007. Now, those of us who were present on that happy occasion are mostly gone now. Harvey is the great source of continuity, and I'm sort of the source of continuity in my diminished form. But Betty Daniels was part of the group that started it. Judy Hanna, both of whom have died. Glenn, who's still living but has moved down to the DC area, and Jesse Kalin. We had wonderful support from the college, both from Cappy Hill and also from Ron Sharp and John Jeanette when we began, and I want to acknowledge that and thank them. We've been in existence 16 years. Many of you were active members of the faculty when we began. In fact, at that time, there were 80 members of the AVC, and I looked it up today, Harvey, there are now 120. So we've increased by a significant amount. And today's talk was the 20th talk in our series that are held here at the Alumni House Living Room. So may the AVC have a long, joyful, and immensely productive life. And thank you all for your help during this period.
Thank Mary Kay for that lovely introduction.
Hit the stop button.